Hanna Barbera, as a company, started in 1957. Already having success with Tom and Jerry in the past, they decided to focus on the television side of animation, as it was a niche not yet currently filled by Disney at the time, unlike film. While the company was absorbed into and later dissolved by Warner Brothers, dying off fully in 2001, the name is still kept around, and all their classic and beloved characters are still used very frequently, and they're given the respect you'd expect from such a long-lasting and iconic company. They have a movie where one of their most iconic and oldest characters pisses on screen. I've always loved Hanna Barbera. My parents grew up with these shows, and they're all just so charming. As a kid, I watched Boomerang far more than Cartoon Network. Genuinely preferred the classic stuff to the then new stuff. That obviously doesn't hold now, but I still love these characters. What's especially great about all the old Hanna Barbera crew is that they never went away. There's still tons of new material for all these characters at a pretty frequent pace. There's just one problem. They barely resemble their old shows. But is that bad? I try to find as many Hanna-Barbera comics, movies, and shows as I can, see if any of these classics still hold up today, like their older counterparts, or if they, well, piss all over them. I'm gonna do this in release order. Loosely, I'm gonna mash some stuff together. For now though, I wanna start with a weird one. Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Based on the classic Space Ghost show, which was a standard superhero show. This is instead a talk show, where Space Ghost interviews real people with help of various villains from the show. With an intro capable of giving seizures and a budget of $3, you'd be forgiven for not knowing this is one of the most important cartoons ever created. It's the first fully produced series by Cartoon Network. Got a spin-off. Was the first appearance of the Aqua Team, inspired a block that eventually became Toonami, and was the forefather of the more out there style of humor that would define cartoons in the future, especially Adult Swim, which this show eventually became exclusive to. This show is a lot of fun. It's lovingly cheap when it comes to its animation, but it's pretty funny.
You talk about women taking over the world. Is this something I'll be forced to stop in the near future?
The best parts may bring in Space Ghost Grandpa, who's voiced by Macho Man Randy Savage.
Purple, nurple, Jerry Belly, oh yeah!
This is the actual best character ever made. As mentioned, this show eventually got moved to Adult Swim, keeping pretty much the exact same style of humor, but now the characters could swear, making this the first real example of something we're going to get a lot of here. More adult-oriented interpretations of these characters. But for Space Ghost, I don't think that really matters, since, well, did anyone know Space Ghost before this? I mean, maybe. I wasn't alive when this came out. But from what I've seen, 90% of people didn't know that this was a reboot of a show that played the superhero thing completely straight. Heck, I'm sure even less knew that Brak, Zorak, and Moltar were villains from the original show, and not just made up for this. A fun show indeed, but Space Ghost really isn't the best way to revive Hanna-Barbera, being an in-name only adaptation of an obscure show. Still, it's a first attempt, that's extremely important, so I can't get mad. We then get to what was mine, and probably a lot of people's first introduction to Hanna-Barbera, live-action movies. 2 Flintstones films, 2 Scooby-Doo films, Josie and the Pussycats, and Yogi Bear. None of these are particularly good, but they're all very fun. Mostly ironically. They all have godlike casting though. John Goodman and Rick Moranis in Flintstones, the entire cast of Scooby-Doo. Heck, even Justin Timberlake gave a surprisingly good performance as Boo Boo Bear. I watched all these as a kid. Because of that, I can't bring myself to hate them. Heck, I'll give these all this. Unlike a lot of live-action cartoon remakes, they stick very close to the old cartoons. Unlike most which are in-name only, Yogi Bear feels like a live-action version of the classic cartoon, which really is all I want. With that said, despite great transitions to the big screen, all these were critically panned. It says a lot that even faithful adaptations don't do super well critically, though all but Josie and Rock Vegas did well financially. There's also a Hong Kong Phooey film planned with Eddie Murphy to play Phooey, but that was cancelled. Considering that the test animation has him eating out of a urinal, this is for the best. Nothing will ever compete with them recreating the Flintstones intro in live action though. Every film made after just felt hollow. This is the pinnacle. Back in 1999, my birthday year, whee! Cartoon Network started up a series of interactive cartoons on their websites, named Web Premiere Cartoons. These were originally fully original productions, but were then expanded on to include CN original characters and Hanna-Barbera ones. A lot of these were lost to time, which means the ones that are still around must be really special. So anyways, here's what Peter Potamus looks like. All these are animated on Flash, and while they mostly look like, well, stock images of Hanna-Barbera characters moving in Flash, some have more unique art styles, like the almost anime look of the Penelope Petstop one, to a Yogi one looking like Photoshop toys, to, again, this. Again though, these are interactive, and since Adobe Flash is dead, and there's not a lot of information on these to begin with, I can't really say much. As for if these gave more attention to Hanna-Barbera, no one's ever talked about these. What do you think? I have to talk about it eventually. Let's just get Scooby-Doo out of the way. Hands down their biggest franchise, and the one that's been getting something every single year. Whether it be a show or a movie, there's almost always a Scooby thing out. Now there's two I want to save for later, but for now, well, I can't tackle every Scooby thing, but I've noticed a trend with the shows. They work like a hydra. Every time one ends, another starts. Pup name ends. What's new starts. What's new ends. Get a Clue starts. That ends and Mystery Inc. starts. Then Be Cool, then Guess Who, and I'm sure we'll get something soon enough. I'll applaud them for this though. They do tend to change things up. While What's New is ironically pretty much just the same as the old show, Be Cool focuses more on humor, and it's actually really fun if you can look past it looking like a Family Guy cutaway gag. Guess Who brings back the more tongue-in-cheek nature of the series alongside the crossover guest appearances the series used to do. Get a Clue has Dolphin Scooby and the Cockatron 5000, and most people can agree Mystery Inc. is the best show in the series. A more serious take on a franchise that doesn't lose focus on the fun of the series by still including the tropes and formula you know, by expanding on it. I remember when this was first released though, and people hated it. I'm not sure why, maybe because it was darker, but like, I was alive at this time. You couldn't go 5 feet without stepping on edgy Scooby fan art. How does Fred even do that? Maybe it was the art style, which like Ben 10 Omniverse, which made by the same character designer, Dare J. Wyatt, was panned if you're looking off, but eventually became beloved. Maybe it was a weirder take on these characters that eventually became beloved and the go-to interpretation of them, like Fred's trap obsession. Whatever it was, everyone seemed to warm up to this. I can see why. While not perfect, and dated at some points, it's very well made. Then there's the movies. Ever since 1998's Zombie Island, I am not exaggerating that there has been at least one Scooby film per year. But most of these are fun if you're a Scooby fan. They aren't super special. I mean, Zombie Island is perfect, and they're getting a bit more unique. We got that amazing Courage crossover film, which I talked about here. What the frick is a subtlety? And last year we got Trick or Treat, which will also kind of stay in story, has some of the most visually striking visuals, I said visuals twice, in anything done by Hanna Barbera. Scooby is always relevant, but when it comes to reviving Hanna Barbera, yeah, that's not happening. Mystery Inc. and Be Cool were hated upon release. What's New is only remembered for its theme song, no one talks about the other shows, and the movies are almost always ignored outside of a few gimmicks. It's sad that this franchise has been going on for several decades, yet the most attention it's gotten was because of a Dragon Ball meme. So, how do we bring back Yogi Bear, one of the most iconic and beloved characters in all of animation, to the mainstream and to the newer generation? Easy! Give him to a pedophile. John Kricfalusi, aka John K., best known at one point for making Ren and Snippy, but now known for being a narcissistic and emotionally abusive scumbag who was later exposed as a groomer, after getting kicked from Ren and Snippy, was picked up by Cartoon Network to make 3 shorts for them. While these were initially rated Y7, later releases of the shorts were rated higher and put on Adult Swim. Oh, and there's also some for the Jetsons. They feel like they were written by Dorkly. The Yogi ones are a lot more interesting. These are all fine. A lot of the gags go on for far too long, but there's some legitimately great jokes too.
Boob?
These shorts are a super mixed bag, and maybe that's just my knowledge of John K. being who he is, hindering some of the legitimately great comedy there is here. They all do feel like weird fever dreams though, and it's no surprise these went nowhere, but they were a fun revisit. Also, why is Yogi so caked up? Sealab 2020 is one of the most forgotten Hanna-Barbera programs. It focuses on a team of underwater researchers watching over a sea base in the far-off time of 2020. Yep, no COVID, no political turmoil, no baby peanuts, just fish. We were robbed. Either timeline you pick though, you seem stuck with a giant squid out to get you, but instead of trying to kill you, it just sits in his room making top 10 lists no one watches. Hey, I resemble that remark. It's not the best show ever made, but I do quite enjoy it. I love most things that take place in water, so this hits that niche. However, Adult Swim decided to give it a new twist with Sealab 2021. Reusing stock footage like Coast to Coast did, this show is basically just a big satire of the original show. You know, watching this show back reminds me how much Adult Swim really inspired early internet humor. From the more edgy jokes to their takes on parody, this feels like what I would see on Newgrounds. The intro though is way too good and feels like an actual magical, whimsical, funsical intro that immediately gets dropped when a clown makes a kid smoke a joint. Even this bizarro world, it does still hold up. Again, if you really like that weird internet humor. But did it help revive HB? God no. Quite literally, no one knows about Sealab 2020 outside of this show. And even then, it's not like Sealab 2021 really required knowledge of the original or even acknowledges it. Plus, the show is a cult classic at best. Not many people even know of this show, much less 2020. So let's look at an Adult Swim show that puts a lot more focus on the cast of old classic characters. Releasing as the first Adult Swim show alongside Brack's show, State of 2021, and Aqua Team, Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, was a show with the titular Harvey Birdman being an attorney for various old Hanna Barbera characters. And even a bear. Here we get hilarious jokes, like Shaggy does weed, and the Jetsons didn't accurately predict the future. Really pushing the envelope here. No, jokes aside. This is a fun show. It's clear that, past a lot of the low blows, the people making this show do actually love and respect the old cartoons. And there's a lot of fun winks and nods to the originals. And the cases they have here are all really clever. This is a forefather to all recent lawyer media. She-Hulk, Better Call Saul, Ace Attorney, all birthed from the egg of this attorney at law. Heck, there's even a game based on the show made by Capcom. After helping rejuvenate interest in Hanna-Barbera though, I'm conflicted. On one hand, no one knows Birdman outside of this. Heck, I was under the impression that he was just a parody of DC's Hawkman for the longest time. After the greater HV-verse, maybe? I'm sure it definitely sparked some interest, but a lot of this show is mostly bashing the old shows, with only a few bits of genuine love shining through. Heck, this ruined Peter Potamus. For a time, people didn't know he was an adventurer or anything outside of asking if you got the thing he sent you. Still, it's a very fun show worth watching. Case closed. Haha, double entendre. Flintstones exists in a weird place in animation history. One of the earliest shows they made, and one that's actually not made for kids. It was supposed to be an actual, genuine sitcom made for an older audience, hence why it has a cigarette commercial everyone is legally required to bring up every time they make up the show. But as years went on, the stigma of animation being for kids formed. Hanna-Barbera made a bunch of children's shows, so people just assumed there was no exceptions, some clearly child-focused spin-offs, and boom, now people only know them for being a cereal mascot. But they have tried to bring back adult Flintstones, like with these commercials parroting the Osbournes, where the only joke is that Barney is an awful person. But more notably, there was Flintstones on the Rocks. This is a TV movie based around Fred and Wilma's rocky relationship. It's weird. It's trying to capture the adult feel, and I mean, it's based around divorce, but it's not like Adult Swim level. There's no obvious signs that this is for adults. It's a fun enough film, I guess. I love the stop motion segment. I don't like the random burglar who just slows down the film, and really doesn't help the tonal problems. And I don't know how to feel about Fred hating Spanish.
What do you mean, Spanish?
We're in Acapulco, Fred. It's a Spanish-speaking city.
People weren't on the rocks about this film. It made no impact. It's sad, but what can you do? Besides making a second Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare joke. So I debated if I should even acknowledge Tom and Jerry here. The rights were sold to MGM long back in the day, which is why some shorts look so different. But unlike Smurfs, which is technically an HP property, this is still adjacent enough to HP due to still being under Warner Brothers. 17 movies and 9 shows, but only 5 shows count in the time period I'm looking at. But there's really not much to say about these at all. All the shows desperately want to be the classic show, which is up there with Looney Tunes as some of the best in animation, but they just don't have the same impact and timing of it. Oh, and if you didn't know, Looney Tunes isn't Hanna-Barbera. If you're curious why I didn't mention Space Jam, or why half this video isn't saying why Looney Tunes show is peak fiction. The movies, though, they've tried some stuff out. The stuff I tried out is being clinically insane. I could just make the rest of the segment talking about the Willy Wonka film, one of the most baffling film ideas I've ever seen, with some of the most interesting frames. But it's not very good, I know, big shock. The Oz film is fun enough though. It does know what you want from the film, and the slapstick is pretty good. The same applies to live action film. The slapstick is fantastic. The rapping pigeons, and this though, yeah, not so much. Honestly, when it comes to everything I've talked about so far, the freaking Willy Wonka film is the closest to getting people to care about Hanna-Barbera. When this was revealed, the internet had a mini version of the freakout they had over Sonic's first design. But no matter if they nail slapstick or not, all these just can't recapture the magic. It's like Tom himself, getting Jerry briefly, only for it to blow up in his face, quite literally. You know, maybe these are genius actually. If you thought Tom and Jerry and Willy Wonka would be the weirdest combination you see today, you were correct. But this is a close second. For God knows why, there's 4 WWE Hanna-Barbera films, using 3 of their 4 biggest properties. All of these are movies, alright? Listen, I'll always think John Cena stopping a boulder with his bare hands, Chris Redfield style, will always be funny. And I'll give these this. They're all entertaining, ironically or not. Also in the case of Scooby and Flintstones, these aren't too out of the ordinary. Both tend to have a lot of cameos from celebrities, and for Flintstones specifically, they tend to have a lot of weird guests who still do what they're famous for in the Stone Age. So wrestling isn't too strange. Outside the novelty of them though, there is nothing special here. And no one talked about them after the initial announcement. An interesting note about the second Scooby film though, they actually planned on having Hulk Hogan in it, but soon after the announcement, he was involved in a scandal, causing the film to be delayed. Besides that, these films sadly aren't knockouts. That's the best wrestling pun I have, I'm sorry. So I've been skipping around, but it's worth noting there was a giant gap in time between what I previously talked about and now. Excluding Scooby-Doo and Tom and Jerry stuff, since those are omnipresent, and WWE, since that's not just Hanna Barbera, there was nothing new since On the Rocks in 2001 all the way up till 2018, where we finally got Hanna Barbera Beyond. These were comic lines based on DC that attempted to bring a more mature approach to the older series. There were 8 of these, alongside a bunch of one-offs that had Hanna Barbera characters interacting with DC ones. They of course all tried to make the shows more dark and gritty, like making wacky races into Mad Max, which I'm sure definitely didn't take less than 30 seconds to come up with. I won't go over all of these, but there's 4 I want to highlight. Scooby Apocalypse is the most well-known and longest running. There's also an idea that came up in 3 seconds. Scooby meets Zombie Apocalypse. An idea so overused, I already made a joke about it.
I can never unsee this. But you'll never see it at all.
But there is actually some good stuff here. I love the idea that all the monsters are mutated humans. This really clever twist on the idea of every Scooby monster being someone in a suit. And the gang has to keep debating with themselves if this is morally right to kill him or not. Daphne always says yes. She's a body count in the hundreds in this. But I'm ridiculously conflicted on this comic. They make a lot of weird decisions. Scooby has these special enhancements that give him emotions. Since we gotta explain everything fantastical about this talking dog, but visually, all they do is give him eyebrows. Shaggy is the hippiest hippie to ever exist, and is not the coward we know and love. Velma is fine, actually. She's the one who works for the dogs this company has an experiment on, and later exposes them. She's kind of the main character. Fred and Daphne, though, they dated in the past, never got together, but Fred kept asking Daphne if she wants to finally marry. This is beaten to the ground, and basically the only thing Fred contributes until later. Honestly, for a comic that wants to bash a lot of Scooby tropes, it's as formulaic as the original, just with new gags. Anyways, this starts pretty fine enough, but it gets insane as it goes on. Daphne accepts Fred's proposal, but Fred gets murdered and turned into a zombie, who can control all the other monsters, interface with technology, has basically Ultra Instinct level reactions, and is generally really strong. Plus is unkillable as a zombie. Forget Ultra Instinct Shaggy, Fred could murder Goku. Some other crazy stuff happens, but I don't know. I actually started to kind of get attached to these characters. It ends with Shaggy and Velma having a baby that they named Fred, and that really touched me. Scooby Apocalypse is a good blueprint for a potential adult Scooby series. I'd love to see this adapted to a show, but for now, it's very underwhelming and mashed up. And an adaptation could really bring out the best while fixing some of the problems. And yes, I am avoiding a certain part of the series. I'll get to it later. But Flintstones 1 is a lot better. Taking place after a genocide of people prior to the creation of the town of Bedrock, that's a sentence, it's basically about the absolute horrors of the Flintstones verse, with a ton of political commentary. As mentioned before, the original show was made for adults, so a more edgy remake isn't too distracting, even if, I'll admit, a lot of it is heavy-handed. I like their attempt at covering gay marriage, but like naming the couple Adam and Steve, a little too on the nose. Or there's the infamous "we participated in a genocide Barney" panel. It's great in the comic, but yeah, that scene has been ruined for me. Oh, and the phrase "yabba dabba doo" being tied to Fred having PTSD is just too ridiculous even for me. Despite that, I really like this comic. I'll stop here so you can read it. As it states left, the Snagglepuss Chronicles is something that can either be really great or really hard to read, depending on your tolerance for the art style. This comic is a very serious and dramatic look at the struggles of a closeted gay actor in the 50s who must move on after his partner dies. The main characters are Snagglepuss and Huckleberry Hound. It's a BoJack Horseman thing. If you get stuck into the story, it's great. But if you can't get past everyone as a colorful animal that's basically just a human wearing a cheap Halloween mask, then this will be absolutely hilarious to you for all the wrong reasons. Didn't bother me in BoJack though, so I didn't mind it here. Snagglepuss is a perfect character for this. After all, to quote an artist for a show I'll talk about later, wasn't Snagglepuss always gay? Yeah, this is a really great comic if you can handle the art. Finally, there's the sore thumb in the line, Future Quest. Unlike every other comic, this one is played completely straight, with various action and superhero characters from HB's library coming to stop evil. It's a lot of fun. This is what all these shows wanted to be, but couldn't due to budget. I really strongly recommend this one. So honestly, I think these were the best reviving interest in Hanna-Barbera. Scooby and Flintstones were massively popular, and Future Quest was received very positively by both Hanna-Barbera fans and newcomers. Reading. That's the key. Sucks that I'm illiterate. Just look at the script. Wacky Races is one of the most important shows to Hanna Barbera. It's one of their most well-loved shows. Dick Dastardly and Muttley are the go-to villains for HB. It's been parodied to heck and back, so it's no surprise that in 2017, it got a reboot. It focuses less on racing, cuts more than half of the original cast, and includes a lot of meta humor. On paper, this is a train wreck, or a car crash, I guess. In practice, it's a very charming show. While I do miss most of the characters, the selection they do have is pretty great, and all the jokes are just really funny. This entire show is. Even the meta jokes. You can kind of feel like the people writing this hate that they have to do this, so they constantly bash reboots and their higher-ups. Wow, it's great to have its reboot take on meta jokes that's just something meant to entertain a viewer instead of insult them. No one talked about the show, but hey, I had fun. Anyways, time to suffer. So there's a thought I've heard that I have never seen any live action stuff. That is a lie. I haven't in fact seen the old Banana Splits show. Perish! Jokes aside though, I love the Banana Splits. It's not deep or complex or anything, but it's just so charming and fun. I love the 4 hosts, I love the shorts, I especially love the theme song. It's a show I hold super dear. It's one of my happy shows alongside Phineas and Ferb. The movie makes me want to have my head caved in by an axe-wielding gorilla. The Banana Splits film is a horror movie based around a fan of the original show who watched it in the 80s, which, like, yeah, I get it, that's not impossible, but why not just have a kid watching in the 70s? Whatever, he wins a contest to be on the show, but it turns out the characters are alive and are kind of murdery. Let's get this out of the way right now. This is the Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff. Yes, evil animatronics did exist before FNAF, but you can't look at this and think it was created for any reason other than to capitalize on FNAF's popularity. Actually, there is one other reason why. I know I'm not the first person to bring this up. Warner Brothers was originally making the FNAF movie, only for Scott Cawthon to leave and go to Blumhouse. There was a decent amount of time before he left though. Enough time to, say, make a script for the movie? One that can be reskinned with a different Warner Brothers property? Yeah, that was never confirmed, but it's not hard to believe. Okay, but forget all that. How's the film? Awful, honestly, thanks for asking. It can't commit between it being a cheesy tongue-in-cheek parody of the original show or a genuine horror movie. And that undercuts literally every single scene. None of the characters are likable in the slightest, besides Snarky of all characters, who actually has a fun arc in it. It's honestly kind of insulting towards the original show. If you're here for the horror side, you got better. I mean, Eric Bauza does a good job as the 3 main splits. It would be so much better if they retained their personalities from the show. Instead here, they're all just interchangeable generic murderers. Oh, and also the song remake goes way too hard here. But overall, Banana Splits, more Banana should not watch this movie. Most of these have been softballs. One-off shows or movies that really won't make a big splash. We need something that just grabs every Hanna-Barbera thing and throws it at your face. We need a cinematic universe. We need something that really punches you in the face and say, this is Hanna-Barbera. Or you can make Scoob 2020. If you're new to this channel, you may not remember that there was a time where Scoob was a recurring joke in my videos. I've retired it, but something about this film always rubbed me the wrong way. It's far from the worst film I've seen. It's mostly just a generic kids film, but there is just so much pain. Why is there Simon Cowell?
Simon fucking Cowell!
Why is there dabbing? Why is there Simon Cowell?
I really hate Simon Cowell!
Why are so many of the performances so bad? Why is there Simon Cowell?
The twat!
It's so painfully unfunny. It barely counts as a Scooby film. And worst of all, for a film trying to set up an HB universe, it barely tries to, with a very few references outside of stuff in the background, when you could easily, say, replace Dick's Army, or include Flintstones in the Captain Caveman segment. Or you could remove Caveman entirely, because he serves literally no purpose, and does not even resemble his original version. This is good here, like the animation. The intro is a lot of fun, and something this really should have been a pup-named Scooby-Doo movie, and especially Dick Dastardly. Oscar Isaacs is the only actor who's actually trying. He's so much fun to watch, both animation and writing, and the reunion with Muttley is genuinely really heartwarming. The thing that's really interesting with this film, though, is how much they cut from it. Concept art was posted, and wow, there's so much cool stuff here. Grape Ape was part of the team. There was a Wacky Races segment based on Mad Max. Funky Phantom was going to be the ghost at the beginning. Dick Dastardly had a different design that made me question my sexuality. Great Mother Freaking Gazoo was being set up as the Thanos of this universe. It's nuts. But sadly, they only had 90 minutes, so they could only include so much. Also, can't imagine this without bringing up its Christmas special. That was scheduled to release last year, but was unfortunately in the crosshairs of the Warner Discovery merger, getting scrapped despite being mostly done. Bronson Stone from Mystery Inc. was going to be in this. I'll never forgive them. This could have been huge, but unfortunately, it released in 2020, which fumbled this film's release, causing it to underperform and mixed with bad reviews, and of course the aforementioned merger killed the HBO cinematic universe for good. Not that I can say, but so while they were prepping up the big screen debut of HB using their biggest property, it also decided to do something with the more obscure ones. This eventually became Jellystone, a show where every Hanna Barbera character that's not from V's lives in a town together and shenanigans happen. This was developed by C.H. Greenblatt, who previously made one show that's bat freaking insane and another that's very down to earth. So he was the perfect pick for an HB reboot. Did he pull it off? Definitely. I love this show. While not as clinically insane as Chowder, it hits its wacky, insane vibe perfectly. Plus, as I said, almost every HB character is here. Special mention to Snagglepuss, Captain Caveman, and Wally Gator, my three favorites who are reimagined greatly, Popcat and his gang, who are just they're murderers, that they probably have killed several people, I love them, and Huckleberry Hound, whose southern charm and genuinely really nice demeanor as a mayor makes it ever more hilarious whenever he does this. This is one I highly recommend. I won't spoil any jokes here, so I'll definitely just say go watch it. Mostly because no one has. Like, it's astounding how I've heard no one bring this show up. As I've noted in my video on Big City Greens, everyone complains about the lack of episodic cartoons nowadays, but they're out there. You'll just ignore them until they get canceled and y'all complain about how much better they are than any other show. Literally, no one cares about this show. It would have been the perfect way to revitalize Hanna-Barbera, but it went completely unnoticed. You wanna know how ignored this show was? At least 4 of the characters were confirmed trans. They were originally male in their old shows. There is not one half-hour-long rant about how Yogi went woke. These are the same people who complain about a poster that appears for 2 seconds in a trailer. That's how you know you failed. So, we hit the final one. And I'm sure it's one no one has talked about. Yeah, so ever heard of Velma? When this came out, time stopped. Everyone talked about this. And yeah, there's nothing new to add. Everything you've heard is true. The characters have nothing to do with the classic ones. It's painfully unfunny. And of course, Velma is so unbelievably unlikable. Personally, I'd say she's the most unlikable protagonist in anything I've ever personally seen. She's a massive jerk to every single character in the show, and is never called out for it. Heck, she's not the only one. Daphne forces Fred into a relationship he's not comfortable with, and is heck bent on finding her parents, despite her adopted mothers being very loving to her. Norval was originally a likable character, due to being one of the more down-to-earth ones, but then he mistreats his new girlfriend just because he wants to get back with Velma, which, no. And Fred is funny actually, but as a fan of the old Fred, I hate this new one so much. I get it's an easy joke for reboots to make a character a complete moron, but usually those characters both are originally seen as stupid, and they have more to them than that in the reboots. Fred was always the smartest of the group alongside Velma, and him being the butt of the joke is all there is to him here. The majority of the jokes are just saying, hey, you know that trope in shows? It's so annoying, right? And then doing the thing. I swear, this and Rick and Morty have destroyed most people's views of meta jokes. Again, you've heard this all before. You may ask, why even make this video? This is all repeated stuff. Well, for one, my friend said they'd give me their next paycheck if I talked to Velma. Pay up. And 2, I genuinely think this is the closest to reviving HB. Think about it. Everyone talked about the show when it came out, and it caused the 5% who were hesitant on Mystery Inc. to finally accept it as great. People give Be Cool a fair shake. Heck, every part of the series got more love. I kept seeing more and more art and pitches for adult Scooby series, all with actual heart and love of the series. Because honestly, adult Scooby could work. Make the cast older, adapt Apocalypse. Just look at these concepts, they're great. It's because of all of this that, genuinely, I do thank Velma for giving Scooby-Doo its chance to shine. So, where does this leave us now? Well, despite trying so hard to, HB can't ever find their footing. They've made some great stuff, but none of it left a huge impact or helped revive them. Maybe it's because they refuse to pick a consistent tone. Are they for kids or adults? Are the franchises great or tired and cliche? I think a lot of this sadly comes from the fact that most HB shows have this kind of mainstream obscurity to them. Like how everyone knows Godzilla. They know his basic power set and 5 or so of his villains, but most haven't seen any films of his prior to the last decade. Everyone knows Felix the Cat was one of the first cartoons. Some may know he has a magic bag, but no one knows his secondary cast or the plot of any episode. Everyone knows Hatsune Miku, she's like an internet icon, but most people don't know what Vocaloid is. They don't even know that she's from a band. Most people think she's from a video game or anime. Heck, people don't even know there's an entire line of Vocaloids, not just Miku. Everyone knows Fred and Barney, their kids and wives, Dino, and the theme song, but that's it. Everyone knows Yogi is smarter than the average bear and eats picnic baskets, but that's it. They know the Jetsons family, that George is completely useless and Rosie exists, but that's it. Scooby-Doo and Tom and Jerry are the only HBO shows anyone knows anything about. A new adult Flintstones show was announced recently, and I saw a lot of jokes about, oh, this is going to cause a whole bunch of Flintstones fans to crawl out of nowhere like Velma did, talking about the franchise, and honestly, I don't see it. It's just nowhere near as big or relevant. In fact, HB is so irrelevant that people don't even know that their 5 biggest shows are even from them. In the early years of CN, HB co-developed all of their shows. So Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, I Am Weasel, and the Powerpuff Girls are all Hanna Barbera shows. This makes sense, since they all spawned from other HB shows. What a cartoon. And they all reference HB all the time. This even applies to some shows released later. In PPG, Fred and Barney are crooks, and Wally Gator gets beaten up. In Weasel, Slate and Spacely are in jail. In Billy and Mandy, Fred is an insane caveman, Yogi is a crack addict, and Haas hits various characters. Oh, and in Duck Dodgers, someone kills a bunch of characters. Huh. When you look at these, they're all really negative. Heck, look at everything I've talked about. Most are mocking the old shows. Not all of them, but most. A lot of HB's legacy is saying it sucks. This is most apparent to someone who's been here since the very beginning. Someone who's appeared in each of these stories. Let's finally talk about Scrappy-Doo. Scrappy appears in almost everything I've talked about here, and every single time, it's the same tired joke. People don't like Scrappy, so let's ignore him, or kill him, or call him lame. I've discussed this in my best video ever. Seriously, pause the video right now and watch it, and it's the same here. They keep beating this to the ground. That's how I feel HB is shown in general. A dated joke. They aren't. Neither is Scrappy. Well, that's the way they want to portray themselves. The one exception to this is Scooby Apocalypse, where he's a hyper-buff and intelligent leader of mutant dogs who eventually joins the heroes for the greater good. He's honestly the best part of the comic, and while he's a far cry from the original version, who I do actually like, I think old Scrappy is funny. It's proof that when they care, they can do great things. And despite so many missteps, I hope that eventually Hanna Barbera can find success with their IPs. Or some respect for Scrappy. So, this video is longer than expected. I'm gonna slip out a banana peel now.
Just as I thought. This place is booby-trapped out the wazoo.